So I do sculptures, furniture, site-specific installations for museums. And then I pay my bills by making jewelry and accessories. Yeah, just lots of stuff. Lots and lots of stuff. It all grows in and out of playing around with disciplines and materials, but not abandoning, I think, where I started. So now we're getting closer and closer and closer to the border. And that little, like, hazy horizon is Tijuana already. You know, my parents both live there. My sisters and I all grew up in Tijuana. It's a safe place for me and for my family. My grandmother had 9 kids. She had 7 girls and 2 boys. And my dad is one of the 2 boys.
My mom, she was a U.S. citizen, born in Azusa, California.
One of the reasons why we're living here in Mexico instead of living in the States, because I didn't want my kids to be unattached to their country. So the roots will be pulling them and feeling that they're Mexicans.
As a kid in Tijuana, I grew up in the very, very tiny, tiny house. The block that we lived in was not the best block as far as looks go, but it was, everybody knew everybody. I was always a really, really outgoing kid. So if a new person moved into one of the houses, I'd go knock on the door and say, do you have any children, and how many children, and what are their ages and their gender? You know, and they would tell me, oh, there's this girl, this boy, this girl, and I'd request the one that was closest to my age, and it was a girl, and I'd say, well, is that one available, and could she come and play? My dad and I would cross the border every day, and I would get dropped off at my grandma's house and then go to school close to my grandma's house. And it wasn't because my parents wanted me to go to school in the US. It was because they didn't have a babysitter. And so my grandmother lived on the US side, and so then they just, by default, I just ended up being dropped off in the US. It was pretty tough though. It was really, really tough because we'd have to leave the house like 3:34 in the morning for us to be able to cross the border and get to the US side in time for my dad to go to work. So I would get dropped off at my grandma's house, sometimes around 5:30 in the morning, and then just wait for people to wake up. Yeah, and so a lot of these blankets are the types of blankets that are used in the weavings that has all the crazy colors in it. I definitely feel the freedom to work with whatever material I want to. I guess it's a little bit like improvising with the material and just kind of letting the material dictate where the composition is going. So it's a little bit like painting with material. My exploration into color and texture comes from the Mexican side of me, and the cleaner lines and more minimal aesthetic come from the US side of me.
I'm just really drawn to the spirit of her work. Tanya puts all of herself into the littlest detail of what she does. The texture and feel of her pieces, I think, completely relates to her own sense of self and her own environment. And her pieces have this surface texture that's sort of reaching out to everything around it. Everywhere you place one of her pieces, it suddenly feels at home.
With Tanya, it's about the concept, and it's about creating something that she hasn't done before, and it's about the process. It's all about the process that I respect about the artist and that I cannot, I don't understand.
Well, I was at the Rhode Island School of Design working on my thesis for grad school. I was thinking a lot about just growing up on the border and having this kind of dual personality where sometimes I was one thing on one side of the border and then on the other side, I'd have to become something else to fit in. And so I was thinking of a lot of stuff that had to do with dualities. Because I was studying how to make furniture, I started thinking about if there was a chair that I could work with and transform into the opposite of what it was, but still letting it retain most of its personality. And so that's kind of how the felt chair idea came out, was just taking something that was super cold and uninviting and transforming it into something soft. It comes as raw wool. And then through the process of hand rubbing it for 20 hours, it becomes felt. So it's like making a gigantic dreadlock, but just around a chair, which is what Carla's currently doing.
It's her work. I respect it. I want it to be perfect as if she was doing it. Tanya has been like, she's my best friend. She's my mentor. She's my boss. She got me introduced to art because when I was a kid, she kind of noticed that I really liked drawing, so she would buy me art supplies and take me to like art classes.
She always tried to push us to do whatever we enjoyed doing, whether it was Carla drawing or even when I was really into writing, she would always kind of make us, push us to keep doing that.
See? This is like, show me your tricks. Tanya has been felting for about 7 or 8 years now. So a lot of the felting now comes to me because she's just really sick of it. And it used to be like this process that was really friendly and really amazing, but then it just takes so long that you just kind of hate it at some point.
Because it's like doo-doo-doo, Getting into felting didn't have to do with a love of felt. It had to do with wanting to learn a technique that I could take to small places that didn't have electricity, running water, or anything like that. And teach people a skill that could help them earn some income.
Early on with Tanya, she felt a responsibility to support where she came from and support the underdog.
This is the community of Maclovio Rojas in what was the outskirts of Tijuana, but now seems to be more and more connected to the rest of Tijuana. I started coming here in, I believe, 1997. And when I started coming here, it was with the Border Art Workshop. And so this community is really special. This place was settled mainly by women. And when I got here in 97, there was already over 8,000 families. This entire place is scrapped together. And so the motto here was pound to fit, paint to match. And so it was just whatever we could get our hands on, we would make use of. We had a lot of different projects going on throughout the community. One of them was to build this community center that was to stand as a beacon, as a ship of kind of freedom and education. The art that was created out of this community center was a really, really important part of what was happening because it was a way for them and us to help them tell the story of this community.
When we would talk to the women about how it was that they settled this land, they would talk about that they would lay down and they would cover themselves, and then rattlesnakes would go in underneath the covers and sleep with them at night to keep warm. And then the women would wake up in the morning, chop off their heads, and eat them for breakfast. And so it was just always a really beautiful way for us to think about how strong the women of this community are, and just how amazing, you know, the circumstances in which they founded this area.
My experience in Maclovio Rojas inspired me to become an artist.
It also just really taught me to trust and love working with other people. Okay, so then we have, these are the doubles.
Okay, those are singles.
The singles, and then there's mediums that are inside there as well. They're just like kind of off-white.
We have such an obsession with Sammy.
So we're like, Sammy, come sit with us.
Jewelry is what allows for all the other things to happen, because there's a larger market, and especially with the internet, people from all over the world can have these products available. So a lot of the times we get really big orders, and because everything is made by hand, we can't really catch up.
Let's move this over closer to you.
We don't outsource anything. Like, still, they have to understand that we do it all by hand, so. Yep.
There's, if we need doubles in chartreuse.
She's a teacher at Otis College of Art and Design. So at the end of my junior year, she's like, oh, would you like to be one of my interns? And I was like, okay, sure. So that's where it started.
It was kind of like a little experiment each class where she would like show us a new thing. She would like bring her burners to class and like show us how to like boil leather and weave and dye things.
With this exhibit and the title of it, I was thinking about lines and what do lines mean. You know, one of the first things that I thought about was the line is the border and the line is artificial boundaries. So the space is really laid out with all these artificial boundaries, because if you really wanted to get through it, you know, it's just string. You could just, you know, go through stuff. But then also I was thinking about how my work crosses in between functional and non-functional, fine art and craft, traditional and modern. It just makes sense for me to be able to play with whatever I want to play with and not really stay within a certain definition of what people call me. I think it's a very frontier sensibility about making work and about, yeah, just how you're defined as a person.